Welcome to the Afro-Collective Think Tank. This is chapter 1. I'm really happy to have all of you here. I thought about each person very specifically, especially for the topic that we're having tonight. Keep in mind that each and every one of us here are family. If Africa is going to build and grow and actually be a force in the world, then we need to come together as family members. To create my company, Femme Bantu Consulting, I gave careful thought to what I wanted it to be and represent, and two things came to my mind. Firstly, socio-economic upliftment of Africa, and secondly, giving women the audacity and the opportunity to be everything that they're called to be. Friends, one cannot be done without the other. To achieve true change on our continent, women need to get up from the back seat. A man that I admire greatly, Chief Charles Nduding, who is graced us with his presence here tonight, said to me one day when we were in conversation about the poor leadership on the continent. He said that women are the nurturers of the world, so why not give the leadership back to women? You see, he understood that a woman's power is in her ability to incubate, birth, and train, to mold a child in the way that it should grow, to protect the child with all strength and fierceness, and ensure that the child bears much fruit. That is what leadership in Africa is lacking, and women must begin to take charge. Now, don't get me wrong, I have been called a feminist by others, but I have never professed feminism over myself. And I don't like to compete. I should not need to compete with what I give life to. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe in the roles and responsibilities of every individual and the importance that each of us walk in our purpose. Because the blurred lines is what has caused the broken society that we have today. This upside down world where living and standing for righteousness is laughable, and the most devious of us are praised. It has created the world where we're faced with crooked leaders, fake friends, wars, rumors of wars. Children are uprising against their parents, and we're asking ourselves, well, where is God? Forgetting that God sent you and I to be the answers to prayers that were prayed on the weak, the poor, the vulnerable, the abused, long before you were placed in your mother's womb. God sent us out as a word to be the solution. Though we're walking around like shells, void of the understanding of who we are and the greatness that we're capable of, living so cheaply, so less than all of the potential that we have. So I decided to do my part. And each of you seated here today, knowingly or unknowingly, are doing your part as well. Because the conversations that we spark tonight will open minds and shift paradigms and ignite a new consciousness, which we will in turn carry and share with the piece of the world that we have influence over. And they will continue to go and share their new consciousness with the world that they can influence. And so we create this cycle until Africa finally wakes up. It was important for me to gather different cultures in the room because we must be deliberate in tearing down the cultural prejudices that have kept Africa separated for so long. And keeping us, of course, from fully functioning. We must understand each other and love one another as brothers and sisters. It is not healthy, nor is it sustainable for one nation on the continent to thrive while others suffer. Is everyone else asleep? Make no mistake that there is no pride in being the only one. The rapper Jay-Z made a comment in an interview once that I really appreciated. He said that, and talking about Black Americans, until all of us are good, none of us are good. My mother made a comment to our eldest sibling about 10 years ago. She said to her, make the sacrifice to take care of your younger siblings today, so that tomorrow they do not become your headache. So it is this wisdom that Africa needs to apply with one another. We are brothers and sisters, west, east, north, south. We are one family. Yet we cannot feed ourselves. A war breaks out in Ukraine, and suddenly children in Sudan are dying because they can't get enough grain. We are family, yet we kept mute as Zimbabwe's economy was suffocated by Western sanctions, to the extent that Mugabe, a name once hailed and praised, savior of the people, was cursed and spat on. We let that happen. We continue to allow rebels to sacrifice the lives of women and children in eastern Congo. We continue to allow militia groups to make life unlivable in northern Nigeria. We continue in South Africa to call fellow Africans Makwere. This cannot continue. Today, South Africa cries because the influx of refugees and undocumented migrants have become an expensive burden on the country. And again, I say, let us make the sacrifices today to take care of each other as neighboring countries so that our siblings do not become a burden to us tomorrow. There is no pride in being the only shining economy on a continent with 54 economies. Let's help each nation find their light, and may their light shine more and more. So consider this roundtable a very fancy family meeting for me. It will be a series of candid but respectful conversations in which we get to share ideas, air our grievances as I've just done, give constructive critiques and quality advice. This is a safe space which must always remain respectful. The more vulnerable we can be with ourselves as family, the closer we're gonna grow to each other and trust one another. Sorry, bless you. Thank you. Sorry. This is the foundation that we build initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area on. Africans are fundamentally sentimental. We do business with who we know. So let's get to know each other. Let's love one another, but most importantly, let us never betray Mama Africa. Thank you. So I'll start us off with a few facts about family-run businesses. An article that was published by McKinsey & Co. in November 2023 states that family-owned businesses account for 70% of global GDP, and they're responsible for 60% of global employment. Top 5 family-owned businesses in the world. Firstly, Walmart, that started in 1962 by Sam Walton, who started with one store in Arkansas. Did I pronounce that correct? Arkansas, USA. Okay, he makes us a joke now. Okay. By the 70s, it was a public listed company with stores across the country. That's just in less than 10 years. The Walton family currently owns 50% shares, and the annual revenue is $400 billion. They employ over 2 million people. Ferdinand Porsche founded Volkswagen, the People's Car, in 1937. Today, it's the biggest car manufacturer in the world, with brands like Bugatti, Bentley, Lambo, Audi under its umbrella. Annual revenue over 200 billion, and the family owns 32% shares. Berkshire Hathaway is a multinational holding company with its roots tracing back to the 1800s in the textile industry. With the decline of the textile industry, CEO Warren Buffett began expanding into insurance and other investments. Today, the holding company owns stakes in major companies and earns over $180 billion per annum. The family owns 34% shares in the company. So that's not top 5, I just gave you top 3. But anyways, let's focus on the big ones. So creating generational wealth in Africa will not only require proper succession planning, but it will also require intelligent protection of the estate that would keep the wealth for generations. But to do that, there needs to be a sacrifice in one generation. Something's got to give. Someone has to delay his or her gratification for future generations. I'm going to take us back to the Walmart example. Our mothers have spazzette shops across South Africa, and similar models occur across the continent as well. What has, up until now, prevented them from scaling from one store in townships to food chains nationwide that would later be handed down to their children's children? Sam Walton began one store in Arkansas in 1962, and his family still controls majority shares of the company. What are we doing wrong? What do you guys think the biggest problem is? What is really preventing Africans?
My mentor said to me once, when you plant a tree, it won't be you sitting under the shade of that tree, but your children. And I think if we look at the sentiment around why, as Africans, we're not able to retain a wealth, I can only think of one thing, and that is instant gratification. And that is where I would like to start.
I agree with
The
that.
discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Africans today, and I'll speak from a male perspective because it has been that the patriarchs are buying the houses, the cars, sending the kids to school, making sure everybody has food to eat. And that was and has been enough. There hasn't been that forward thinking of, okay, so when I'm gone, the money dies once the patriarch dies. So what do we start instilling in ourselves and in the generation coming after us that is going to ensure that this little sweet shop that I started, that my daughter is going to start selling sweets, but she's going to do it on a bigger scale, and her daughter after her will do it on a bigger scale. And where is the pride in African children in following what their parents and grandparents have done? A friend of mine, when I was sharing the topic of today's discussion, said to me that he always tells people that Portuguese and Arabs, the money is crazy because it goes so far back. But what you'll find in their societies is that grandfather was a fisherman, daddy was a fisherman, I will be a fisherman. But because it has been so many generations passed down, they continue to grow, they control markets, and now they expand, they go outside of their immediate community, nationwide. Now they're going to neighboring countries, and you'll find that it's just one family selling fish. Why are Africans so in love with doing anything other than agriculture?
For me, I would like to start off by looking at the education system, right? And the value that we have placed on these small businesses that we have as families, small families. Our parents, when they started these tuck shops or these small businesses, didn't think of it as this is something big. They were just thinking the family needs to eat, right? And now when they have kids, their thoughts were, my kid needs to go to school so that they can become better than me, that they can do better than me, and a good salary. You get what I'm saying? So the value was placed more on they need to go to school so that they can secure good jobs, and not more on what is the value of this business that I'm building. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think that there needs to be that transformation in thinking to say there is value in what I'm doing. And I think we're also moving towards a point in time where we have too many options in the world today, right? I, for one, I'm not a fan of democracy for many other reasons, but I know it is good because it's giving us too many options where even if my parents started a particular business, I can grow up and say, oh, I've got my own passions. I've got my own dreams. Who said I want to run a spaza shop? Who said I want to become a mechanic? I can go on and say, I want to become an accountant or I want to become whatever. And we are given those options. And that is why then it gets to a point where there's this, the system gets broken. And also we have this thing of, we want each of us in our families, even as Black people, and I'm seeing it happen today, we want to be the ones in front to say, I built this up from scratch. You don't want to be saying, oh, I joined Lesego and we built this together. You always want to be the one seen in the forefront. And because of that, then we can't build something that's generational, that's all within us. You can find that there's a family with 5 young people, each of them has their own different businesses. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Why are we not coming together and establishing one business and growing it together? But egos could be coming into play where one is saying, no, I want it to be my own business. I want it to be my own CEO. I'm not going to listen to you to say I must do things in this particular way. So can you take it from there?
I think just something you said there about us as Black people, but I think also something you said, Sifa, earlier. As Black people, we are not willing to, when we run businesses, we don't recognize that we haven't got all the expertise as Black people. This is what I've seen in my life, that my uncle, for example, was very wealthy and so forth, and he trained his kids and so forth. But if I look at the Rupert family and the Golding family, and each of them are worth between 12 billion and 12 and 14 US dollars, a billion US dollars. What they have done is they've recognized that we as a family don't necessarily have the skills within us as a family. As you say, you want to go to accounting or you want to go to this and that. But if you hire skill, even as a family-owned business, you have a greater possibility and chance of success. So what we do is, yes, we run businesses as spaza businesses forever. So we don't bring visionaries into our businesses. And that's what kills our businesses remain spaza shops. I mean, I used to laugh with a worry in my eye because I started business in 2004. And when you pitched to prospective clients and so forth, and people would treat your business, there was a thing called a CC, a closed corporation in the country. I think now it's changed to a PTY Ltd. And it was almost like a mockery of, oh, these people with their CCs. And I mean, I was in corporate before. So it's not that I had no education, so I chose to run a CC. But it was almost like you're running a spaza shop because perhaps you're not educated enough or whatever. Just the connotation of a CC. And I think that came from a mindset of people having grown up in families where their parents were running spaza shops or had a taxi business that never got formalized into a respectable business. And therefore, as Black people, we don't respect business because we don't corporatize business and see it as a formalized structure that can become an employer of others. So when you are in business, the initial thing, a thought from a Black person is you defaulted to that because you didn't work out in a structure of a bank or a corporate organization. Therefore, your default for losers is that spaza shop type of place. And that's where we go wrong. This is why business people, even people who grow up in a business, look down upon the business that the parents have started. They have no desire or passion. I am going to graduate from UCT or Yale and come back and run the family business because I'm proud of it. They feel like they will do better if they work for the New York Stock Exchange. And then the parents die and the business perishes because there's no succession. The kids are not proud to be associated with it because we don't formalize our businesses.
I want to interject there on the parents die and the children, allow the business to die as well. Is that a parent's fault or a child's fault?
It is the parents' fault, but our parents, as Black people, we have just come into understanding the economics of money in the monetary sense. We haven't just come into the understandings of trading, because we have been trading for thousands of years. But the formalized trading of the Western concept of what trading looks like is something that has just been introduced to us as Africans. Prior to this, we have been trading in livestock and crops and all sorts of, and minerals. Some countries like Nigeria and other countries are rich in minerals. And if you look at the Mapungubwe history and the history of Mansa Muna and Mensa, Monsa Mensa, and you'll understand that Black people have always understood trading. But why is it that we don't have today the legacy of Mansa as a Rupert or someone who founded a bank? Why is it? Where did that go?
Yeah.
It died with him because it wasn't structured, it wasn't formalized. He was trading, and maybe his sons were trading at the time, and he was a wealthy man, but there was no forward planning in a structured, and that we can credit the West for bringing that. I mean, we can't say that colonization is absolutely horrible. It has its pros and cons. And maybe one of the positive things is the structuring of business, because it's economics. At one point or another, probably as Africans, we were going to end up discovering that there's a thing such as structuring and formalizing business. There is a currency. Maybe we would have designed our own currency. Maybe we would have come up with our own banks. We'll never know, right? Because the West came in and introduced, but we know that interrupted. We know there were ancient civilizations. We know there was a way of doing business and so forth. But we have to ask ourselves, what happened to the pharaohs? Where is that legacy? Why don't you see the Bank of Pharaoh today? Like, you have to just say, as Africans, the culture of corporatizing something beyond yourself so that it outlives you is not something that we have.
I agree with you. I was running a business strategy session with some friends, and I went through the basics of strategy and strategic planning, 1, 2, 3. And one of the ladies said, that sounds great, but we're Nigerian, and in Nigeria, it's kind of just anything goes. It just works. Business just works. And when I asked her, what are the plans for your company? She said, well, I want to grow the company to be a chain store like Zara. And I'm like, so how is that just gonna work in the world? Zara is a multinational, and if you want to be a multinational, you need to think bigger and corporatize. So I agree with that. But what I don't agree with is that benefits of colonization was that they brought us structuring, because what it benefited them because of capitalism. Because they brought capitalism and they needed to structurize, because capitalism wasn't going to work without that structure. So that's just what I
can. I think also that's good point.
I wanted to pick up from what you just said.
Very interesting.
Sorry.
No.
As a chief, I'm going to come from a spiritual and traditional angle to all of this. And I'm going to be lenient to Africans a little bit. And when you take a fish out of the water, it dies. When you take a tree out of the soil, it dies. We had a way of life. They didn't teach us business. We've been business people. We traded. We had trade and barter system back in the day in Africa. If you have bread and I don't have bread, we trade. So we've known trade. But now the scavenger comes in with his mentality, and saw us wearing gold, the Cape Coast on our teeth. We were flamboyant. We were who we were. We were in Africa, and they came and turned all of this around and created value and the monetary system into this and formed capitalism. I did a Harvard business school training, 6 months training, and when you go into that space, what they teach you is how to kill the next guy. Strategic concept of brinkmanship. How do you drive the next person to the brink that they fall away, they can't come back to life? And that is corporate model. And as Africans, we are not those people. We are not that. We are not that culture. And the political system that they introduced to us while we were sitting in our comfort zone tells me that as a South African, as a Congolese, as a Ghanaian, you know, the only way forward is to create this enmity. Tell a guy you to think about the next guy. We cannot even exchange. Now we are in South Africa and we are not even, Africa is not, if you look at the business within the continent, no proper flow of business within the continent. Why? Because there's this introduction of divide and conquer and 100%. All of that stuff. And when Thabo Mbeki, I was able to sit in the meetings when Thabo Mbeki was pushing this African economic renaissance. I said, and I still remain, I remain in that. If we do not bridge the cultural bridge in Africa, there's no business flow going anywhere. Because we still look at ourselves from this lens. That's the Nigerian, he's a scammer. 100%. He's been branded. That's the Congolese, he's been branded. That's the South African, he's been branded already. So in my mind, you know, I can't do business with who I don't trust. Now you're naming all these big corporations, the wild things. How did they support their system?
All the robber barons.
All the robber barons, how did they support their system? They are still in Africa milking us, our leaders. If you are not a stooge, they kill you. It's happened over and over again. Now, coming back to generational wealth.
Religion, can you touch please?
Okay. I
No,
touch
you can do
it. You know, they have brought in religion. The Arabs have done what they have done to Africa. The West have done what they have done to Africa with the churches, with the trappings of hospital aid and all of that. And we are jumping up. And while they are doing that, bringing Jesus to us, who is already our brother.
Yes, sure.
They captured Jesus and put him up there somewhere and painted him another color. And gave him another name, and we are looking at this Jesus that is up there, not knowing that Jesus is our brother. This is the Garden of Eden, for God's sake. So the education system have been polarized and given all sorts of, we are learning about them. UCT, Harvard, whatever. It is the way they want to frame our minds.
You mean they're distracting us while they're taking all the resources?
Where they are taking all the resources.
100%.
I give you Jesus, and I take the whole world.
100%. We pray every day.
We pray every
We
day.
don't get work.
And you know, so
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
so now
Yeah.
we need to, first of all, to get into this generational problem issue. Because my mother, yes, you're right. My mother was in the Southeastern. She was the biggest palm oil distributor in the whole of Southeast. She died while she sent us to the US to go and study their curriculum and their education. When she died, that died with her. I could have been the biggest palm oil distributor in Nigeria right now. But why she was funding us with the money from Nigeria. We are living big overseas. When she died, I don't even know who her clients are. So you are right in that regard. But I want to bring the problem to where the problem lies.
The heart.
The heart. Do we sit there? No way. We now, as the collective African think tank, must begin first in this room.
100%.
Hold our hands together.
100%.
Cry our cries shed whatever we need to shed out. Talk to each other as brothers. There's your opening speech, your and sisters. I mean, there are more women here than men. So, you touched on something. We must hold each other's hand. We must love each other. We must first know each other. Because in Africa, we do not do business with people we don't know.
100%.
It's just that way. So the cultural bridge is very important to start dealing with the generational issue in Africa.
Thank you. I guess we don't want him in made him a chief. Yeah, I think it's simple. I will just give you the floor.
Yeah, I think as I'm sitting here listening, I think one thing that will remain true as we go around is that the challenges that are faced by Black-owned businesses are so complex and multifaceted. I don't think we could definitely paint it with one brush. There's the colonization problem, there's the mindset problem that we need to change our mindset and all of that. So I think I just want to acknowledge that it's a very complex issue. And then I think we also can't speak about like the multi-generational wealth, passing on of multi-generational wealth without talking about like the challenges that we're faced with accumulating wealth. It's a very difficult concept when you think about like the systematic racism that I'll speak from a South African perspective. There was systematic racism which brought in policies that didn't even allow for, even if let's say Mam Sondo has starts a, what would you call, maybe not a spaza shop, but let's say to go to a bank and say I need a loan.
Yes.
She's not bankable.
Yes.
She's the unbanked. So now we're trying to want our Sonto to start thinking outside of the resources that she has, which is very, very difficult. I mean, even like the red listing, not being able to be insured is a big thing. And the reason I say that, I can just think of one anecdote. It's not my story to tell, therefore I won't tell people's names. But I know someone whose grandfather actually had a bakery. And then the father took it over, and it was a very successful bakery. Started quite small, and they started delivering bread to most of the West. And however, because books are not really that clear and all of that, it then becomes uninsurable because we don't actually know like what are your profit margins, and it was built out of need. And one machine broke down, but it was like such a pertinent machine, like that made the whole bakery a business. And because it was uninsured, now you're sitting with a family who has built like their bread and butter literally from this bakery. But because it's uninsured, they can't replace this one machinery. Now they had to sell the bakery in parts. Therefore, that's already like something that had been passed down generationally, but because of the red listing, you couldn't see them go past. So, and I think if we can all sit here, we can all kind of like name businesses, family businesses. We don't have like this vast, broad list of Black-owned, multi-generational family businesses that we can speak about. And that already tells me the story that it's not a norm. So the families who have made it, it's an exception, right? The thing that I'm mostly proud to see right now, even though there's like challenges that we can actually speak about, the thing that I am happy to see is I'm seeing like young people build scalable businesses. I mean, like I think about what's his name, Baloyi, the one who's building Batu. I mean, we're watching him build a brand and a business. Where I can think about Beauty on Tap. That lady self-funded her business. It's an e-commerce business that there's Portia M as well. I mean, Matebe, yes. And then you also think about Boy, the guy who started the tourism business in Soweto, and they're building scalable. They are actually starting to think.
Eats right here.
Uber Eats.
Can we please just go for a second?
So I think the thing that gives me some sense of optimism is that we're actually seeing young people start to build businesses that are scalable and that can be passed down generationally, because they're not only just building profit-making businesses, which is what I think our parents and people who started before us were trying to do. They were building out of need. need for provision for the family or need a community that, like a need that had to be met within the community. And now I think we have surpassed that, in that I know that perhaps the education system, it might have been a barrier in taking over other family businesses, but I think it also has created mindsets that allow some people to think about businesses from a different perspective than our parents, where it's not just about putting pap and red meat or pap and chicken on the table every month. It's not just about paying school fees, but it is about like that legacy building. I think within that optimism, some of the things that they are doing right is that they're not just building the business, they're building a brand. Which is something that I think we definitely need to start thinking about. Even like the businesses that you mentioned as the top 3 family businesses, honestly, they're brands. They didn't build the grocery store. They built a brand that people started to believe in, and they were able to scale that. But also the financials. I think some of the barriers that exist
I'm
for...
going to hold you there.
Okay.
On barriers,
No
I want
worries.
you to hold that thought, and we're going to get to the barriers.
No worries.
Ndahafa, I know you have something to say, and then I want to quickly piggyback off of something that you said about how our generation is actually building bankable, scalable businesses. And we have a prime and amazing example here, so I'm going to pick on someone, because I want to know, in terms of scalable business that is very attractive to investors, how do you plan on protecting that if you do that, or which I know you do? How do you plan to protect that and make sure that Analytics X and Spaza Eats is not going to be sold off to these multinationals who can fund you and help you scale the business across the continent within the next year the way that you want it to? What are your thoughts and sentiments towards that? Are you going to hold off a bit and scale slowly, or are you going to go big and go home and sell off to, those big multinationals who are hungry for investments in young Africans? So I'll let Ndahafa speak first, and then Mr. Tanifani Banks can hand that up.
No, thank you very much. I think I wanted to touch on what I'm in agreement with what you said there in terms of the rationale, like what are we trying to do, what were our parents trying to do, and what is our historical context. And my point when I raised my hand was after she spoke, and it's really just the background. I think we cannot talk about generational wealth without really addressing what it is, or defining it, what it means to us. What does it look like? What is wealth? What is business in the African context? Because those are the factors that really plays a role in us classifying it, whether it's a failure or whether it's a success. Here on the table, I've heard conversations or input of the purpose of why our parents established a business and the capitalist influence that came with it. Now, from our historical context of successful businesses, by defining African businesses from the context of our forefathers or our parents, success then means creating a business that is sustainable, might not be growing, might not be upscaling, but able to feed the community, the nuclear family, as well as the whole community. That is what success meant, looking at us from a socialist and economic point of view of our system and ubuntu of raising a community. And we as the next generation comes from those successes 100%. Of communities. We saw shops from the time that we're growing up, sustainable, might still be the same way that they looked when you were 5, but they are able to feed families and sustain. That is the definition, and by that context we have succeeded as Africans. But now, being in a capitalist world, and now having fed what we've been fed, given what we have given, taken it, embraced it, because we can't change, adapt or perish, we are now in the capitalist world. And now as Black people, most people are not comfortable with this book, The Capitalist League, where the author of African descent, can't pronounce his name, Chika, will say that we need to accept the entrepreneurship opportunity that capitalism presents, and we have to own it and see how to position ourselves, which take us now to where we are as African, and where we have ideas that are growing. So we don't have challenges of ideas or like coming up with innovation as young or Africans in general. we have a challenge of growing, upscaling, and being systematic in our growth. Which now also, I like the point that you touch on to say that now that you are here, you have a good idea, someone in the room who has started, scalable, a good brand established. How do you protect that while you try to balance maintaining a legacy of having it as a family business, but then having that challenge of capital where you need multinational to fund your project, and then grow. So as African, I think we need to give ourselves credit to say that there are historical challenges which we didn't have means of access to means of production, and we cannot look at it as much as we have political rationalized to say like, yes, our leaders have failed, but we need to say that we come from a system of apartheid like Namibia and South Africa, colonization, poor governance, and structure set up for failure. So our negative zero is their zero.
We have already pushed.
We are pushing for equality without equity. Our resources are not equitable. So now we have to give ourselves and we say, look, while I am here trying to build a business system, I have text, black text here that is pushing me. I have an issue of access to funding to scale, and then I have to create system to make my family understand that this is not just an issue of having money making, like Uncle who? Again, your name, I forgot. Uncle Tali is not just the money machine. He's not just to pay. Yes, the business needs to be sustainable, and that comes from us as African being empathetical and also understanding that we have bigger challenge historically, and that failure is systematic, and that we need to be more intentional, especially because the African that we're speaking about, we are part of it. The leaders that we're speaking about, we're part of it. The business people, we're part of it. And I don't see anyone here who's uninformed, or uneducated, because most of those challenges that we are having is having a face of what success look like. And we might look at it as very vain to say like someone is successful and they are an individualized, that person is having an obligation to define success. A black child needs to know what success look like. And for me, when I gain something, the Range Rover might not be pride. It's to show my people that someone can come from that community to drive it. And that is an inspiration to another person. So it's instigating that, or like causing that reaction. So I would like to end it there to say, how do we then start to redefine success? What picture do we paint? And how do we draw inspiration from others without vintifying them? Because that person who's bought, money has redefined, has inspired me to also become someone, because I would want to have a business like Uncle Vubu. So our challenge is much deeper than what they made us believe. And the self-hate, we must avoid judging, because sometimes our mindset, we feel like we are aiding, but we might judge those that are also doing their best with the limitation of their knowledge of defining as well as embracing success by their terms.
Thank you, lovely. But we'll give Sadikani the floor, and then we'll jump over to you.
Was going to feed into what I think what he said to say.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. I respect everyone. I think every point was key, and it touched on the key reasons why we are here. I think we are the generation that our ancestors wanted. We shouldn't expect our mothers. My mother used to own a spaza shop. We shouldn't expect them to do this. They don't know this, and they don't even have the knowledge. They don't know university. They did enough to get us here, and we need to accept that, and we start here. Now we are the new generation that needs to create the ecosystem. And in my business, analytics, is a tech company, and we've been building technologies for the same companies that are big and multinational. That's what got me to BRICS, and in the African continent we traded. Until I realized when I was in Russia that we're just supporting the same ecosystem that was there. And that's something that is deep for me. I just can't say it. But what is deep for me is that I've been building nice solution with my genius mind, with my team, to help the same companies scale. And I'm not allowed to talk about them because I signed NDAs. Until then, I told myself I'm going to build my own, and I don't care whether it works or not. But I'm going to build a digital ecosystem for the township, for the people. And the mindset came from the fact that there isn't any digital ecosystem that is connecting our people. I don't expect a Dora's puzzle shop to scale. I expect myself to help them scale. And this ecosystem, we'll call it Spaza Eats, which was built to connect this. It's a three-way app integration, which allows a customer to buy from an outlet. Outlets allows a driver to come and pick up. And an outlet can control the drivers that are around them. So it's basically geographic ecosystem that is backed by, now we are a merchant bank now, approved by Reserve Bank, but it was backed by that. Now, when you do that digital inclusion and allow them to use POS in their walk-ins, you create...
Congrats on being a merchant bank.
Yes. You create a digital inclusion and bankability. These guys now can prove to a bank how much they make, and they can show how much they're paying their team. You can see scalability. One of the reasons what limited scalability with our sponsor shops is your sponsor shop is not getting orders. It's only people within 500 radius that can walk to your shop. It's only 20 people who can walk in. You can only make 5,000 a month. How do you expect to scale? But when you build an ecosystem like Spaza Eats, you scale him from 50 orders a day to 100. From 5,000, 8,000 to 40,000, one restaurant. This guy is able to multiply from 1 to 2 restaurants to 3. I've got restaurants we have 8 now restaurants. These guys are scaling because of this digital ecosystem. I don't know where it will take me, but it's an inclusion. So we need something like that in different ways. So we realize that we need to push it beyond, maybe Spaza Eats might be a wrong name, because we need to push it in restaurant, we need to push it in grocery. That's where you see that I've got a lot of supermarkets. And the BPs and Pick n Pay, they're already in there. And then you see us bringing suppliers, guys who are supplying hair products, any equipment, we call it market. So there's Spaza Eats, Spaza Groceries, Spaza Market, and now we're talking to Standard Bank now, we're adding Spaza Fresh, which is small scale farmers, and we've got agriculture as well. But now you are digitally connecting the ecosystem that was not activated. You can't tell me there's no money there, because money is moving every day. But now the challenge for me is that this digital ecosystem is too big, it's bigger than me. I was supporting this with analytics, with their money. I'm not able to do that. And of course my phone is filled with their investors. I'm getting a lot of investors who are interested on this platform. And every day I'm getting tired. I'm going to sell it. I'm telling you, I'm going to sell it. The question is to who? I do a lot of work with analytics with the banks. I've got resources that work in data science, data engineering. I've got the best resources. And now I was talking with one of the bank, and I was telling them that you guys are sitting there and you are supposed to be my carrier. You don't have to look at me and say, he should have been doing this. I feel like we sit there with the knowledge and we don't use it. And unfortunately, the funds we have is not enough. If you have 20 million, it's not enough to invest on this. This needs a proper economic activation, not 20 million. You know what I mean? So I'm getting to a point where I'm running out of money now. I'm thinking, do I need to move out of State City and go stay in Sunnyside and get this thing to work? Or do I have to sell this thing and go finish my house? You know what I mean? So, yes, so I'm sitting in a point where we're activating the economics, the system is working, and the people who want to buy it, unfortunately, is not us.